My name is Gavin Evans, and this is my review of Bojack Horseman Season 5. And just like my other reviews for this show, this will be a spoiler in-depth review of this season. I will be going into spoilers, so if you haven't seen this season, go and watch it, then come back and watch my review. And let's begin with the very first episode. Episode 1 is called The Light Bulb Scene, and I thought this was a good start to the season. We've got Bojack actually trying to be a better person at the start of this season. We see that he's got limits on how much alcohol he's drinking and that he's actually trying to better himself, and that is nice to see. And I thought the whole situation he was getting in during this episode was really humorous, where the director wanted him to be nude for this show and Bojack refused to, and just that whole dilemma was really funny. And I also loved how Todd got a job at whattimeisit.com. Just that entire storyline, especially in this introduction episode, I thought was really funny. And yeah, it's not a phenomenal episode, but I thought it was pretty good. And episode 2 is called The Dog Days Are Over, and already was a great episode of this show, because this is a great episode of this show. This focuses on Diane as she struggles with her divorce from Mr. Peanut Butter. And just seeing her in this state, it's really emotional, and you can see how she feels a real disconnect, not just from the people around her, but also from her homeland, her culture, and how just truly alone she feels. There's a few moments in this episode that you really feel the weight of everything that she's going through and just how hopeless she feels, and you really do feel bad for her. And I thought this was a really well-written episode that explored Diane in interesting ways. Just watching her break down crying, it's emotional. And I also do like, I'm pretty sure it's this episode, it might be a later episode in this season, but I think it's this one, where she mentions making out with Bojack, and Bojack is just like, no, like, you're my best friend, let's not do that. And I love that. I love the fact that we see that Bojack just wasn't waiting around, waiting for her and Mr. Peanut Butter to get divorced. That he actually just cares for her in that friend way. And I like saying that. This is just a really well-written, character-driven episode that had lots of emotion to it. Great episode. And then we get episode 3, Planned Obsolescence, and this was a really funny episode. I love how it plays into the cliche of, oh, the two people dating go over to the parents' place and they want to have sex, but they want to hide it from the parents. And because Todd and Yolanda are asexual, I love the reverse on that in this episode, and how the parents want them to have sex but they won't. That was really funny. I also liked how Bojack was trying to help Gina achieve her dreams, but he ultimately did it in a way for him to feel good about himself, and I just thought that kind of character writing was really good. And I also found it really revealing how Mr. Peanut Butter was already dating Pickles. It kind of shows that it really could have been anyone. As long as Mr. Peanut Butter isn't alone, that he's fine. It doesn't matter who the other person is. He's a people pleaser to a complete fault. And I think the way that they reveal more about his character is actually really well done. So yeah, this was a really good episode. And then we get episode 4, Bojack the Feminist. And this is the political episode of this season, but it might also be the best political episode of the entire show. This episode has some really funny stuff. I forget the name of the problematic character, but his entire appearance cracked me up. And I also like how Bojack just goes up there and says that men shouldn't choke their wives, and everyone just applauds him for being all brave in that. And it's kind of heartbreaking when you look back from the end of this season on this moment. But there's still some really funny stuff in here, and the cliffhanger of this episode is phenomenal.
She just walked in at the worst possible. It wasn't my fault, right?
I don't know what you're talking about.
On the boat, there was a girl.
What?
In New Mexico. And she trusted me.
What?
I keep asking myself, if her mother didn't walk in, would I have done it? And part of me is sure that I couldn't. But another part knows that's a lie. How do you make something right when you've made it so wrong you can never go back?
It does feel a little out of character for Anna Spanakopita. Like, is she actually trying to help Diane, or is she trying to screw over Bojack? And we don't really ever find out, so it does feel a little out of character. But when this cliffhanger came to be of her showing Diane that clip of, well, that tape of what Bojack said about New Mexico, my jaw dropped. Phenomenal cliffhanger, great episode. And then we get episode 5, the Amelia Earhart story, which focuses on Princess Caroline. And I think the way that they flesh out her character here is really well done. It has emotion to it, it gives her depth, and the whole stunt storyline with Bojack I thought was really funny. And then we get episode 6 of season 5, Free Cholo. this episode is a masterclass in writing. This entire episode is just Bojack talking at his mom's funeral, making his eulogy. This episode is heartbreaking. It fleshes out each character and their relationship in such a perfect manner. I think it has a lot to say on life, on death, on the type of impact that you leave behind, about the permanency of everything that happens in life, and how we struggle to deal with that. It's emotional, and it still has some really funny moments. When it ended, I'm just like, was that 20 minutes? Like, it felt like 5 minutes to me. But I was just so engrossed in what was being said, and I can't state it enough. This episode is a complete masterpiece.
You know the shittiest thing about all of this? Is when that stranger behind the counter gave me that free churro. That small act of kindness showed more compassion than my mother gave me her entire goddamn life. Like, how hard is it to do something nice for a person? This woman at the Jack in the Box didn't even know me. I'm your son. All I had was you. Suddenly you realize you'll never have the good relationship you wanted, and as long as they were alive, even though you'd never admit it, part of you, the stupidest goddamn part of you, was still holding on to that chance, and you didn't even realize it until that chance went away. My mother is dead, and everything is worse now. Because now I know I will never have a mother who looks at me from across the room and says, Bojack Horseman, I see you.
One of the greatest episodes of any television show ever. And then we get episode 7, Int Sub, which I'm very mixed on as a whole, actually. I was expecting to love this episode because I had a sense of where it was going by the end, and it does go in that direction by the end. But getting to that point, I found it to be a little messy. I do think it was smart about how the two different therapists are using different names for all the different characters, and how people really do that when they're writing scripts. Like, lots of scripts come from a personal place. Like, people do write from their own experience, and how they switch up names, and how they might change their actions a little bit just so it's not 100% spot on. We kind of see how the two therapists do that with this story in this episode. So it's really smart in that regard. But I will say that the way Bojack acted with Diane having her own therapist, it felt a little too over the top for me. It felt a little out of character, even for Bojack. Yeah, so that whole element didn't really work for me. The stuff with Todd and Princess Caroline was funny enough, but the last 2 minutes of this episode where Bojack pissed off Diane enough that she actually writes what happened in New Mexico into the story of what happened in, like, what's happening in his TV show, I was shooken up by it. Like, it was such an impactful moment. When Bojack realizes it and him and Diane just have that look, just phenomenal stuff. I wish the rest of this episode had that same impact, but boy, does it end strong. And then we get episode 8, Mr. Peanut Butter's Booze, and this is a fantastic episode that reveals a lot about Mr. Peanut Butter. It's like I said, the guy's incapable of growing up. He has an inability to, and it kind of shows here when he's with a different girlfriend or wife each time he goes to one of these Halloween parties, and you really see about how these people outgrow him, but he just stays stagnant. And I think it actually reveals a lot about the character. I think everything else going on was really funny. It revealed some of the characters' past in humorous ways, and I just thought this episode was really funny. It was entertaining, but it was also character driven and revealed a lot. This episode was just fantastic in every way. And I like that moment between Mr. Peanut Butter and Diane at the end where she helps him up. That was a sweet moment. So yeah, this is another great episode. And then we get episode 9 called Ancient History. And there is some good stuff here. Like the Mr. Dad storyline with Mr. Peanut Butter was really funny. The sex bot being the boss of Todd's company was funny to begin with. I will say that it eventually overstays its welcome, and the moments between Bojack and Hollyhock are well done. So it's not a great episode, it's not the most memorable, but it's perfectly fine. And then we get episode 10, Head in the Clouds, and this is another fantastic episode. I like how they didn't want people to see themselves in Bojack and continue to act that way, and just use this TV show as its own justification. They actually made it a point to make sure that, no, just because you see it on this show, in TV and other movies, doesn't mean that your shitty actions are justified, because it's not. And they made it a point in this episode to be like, no, if you see yourself in this show, then you need to be better. And I love that. But the fight between Bojack and Diane is completely heartbreaking. If you have ever gotten into a massive fight with someone that you really cherish and really care for, and you start saying mean and nasty stuff to each other, then you definitely get the impact that this episode has, because yeah, it feels very real, it feels very honest, and I just thought it fleshed out both of the characters brilliantly. And just the arguments and just what they were saying to each other, it's just like, these two were such good friends, and they got into this mean and nasty argument, and it's just heartbreaking to watch. And just watching some of the ways that Bojack was steering away from his past actions and trying to justify his own actions, it's just like, stop it, Bojack, stop it. The fight scene is so well written. It's a fantastic moment in a fantastic episode. Loved it. And then we get episode 11, the showstopper, and this is the drug trip episode. Bojack starts overdosing on pills ever since him and Diane had that fallout. He's getting more violent, he's becoming meaner and nastier, and just seeing that, it's just, it was tough to just watch him be this way in this episode. When he caught Charlotte, I'm just like, I was cringing so hard, and just where this episode ends up with him choking Gina.
I'm not kidding. The pills. Now!
You're out of control.
Give them to me!
Let go. You're hurting me.
Okay, cut.
Bojack, he said cut.
Bojack? Buddy? I think he's really strangling her. Okay, that's enough.
What the fuck is wrong with you?
Was completely heartbreaking, and that's when we get this season's F-bomb. It might be the worst, one of the worst singular actions that Bojack does in this entire show, and you just feel the impact of it. Like, it is a devastating moment that you truly despise him for. This episode was well written, it was emotional, it was just incredible, fantastic episode. And then we get the season finale, The Stopped Show, and this is a fantastic end to the season. I just love the stuff with Bojack and Gina, about how Bojack hates himself, he feels awful about what he did, so he tries to make it right with Gina, but she doesn't want him to. She's like, stay away from me, don't touch me again. And how she doesn't want this to go public because she doesn't want it to affect her career. But Bojack wants it to go public, so for once he wants to do the right thing, but he's getting told not to. I just think there's so much depth and nuance there, and I just love how it ends with Diane dropping him off at rehab. It ends on a really bittersweet note that is quite uplifting, actually, about Bojack actually trying to do better.
You know what you're gonna say? You wanna practice?
I am here because I need help.
Overall, this is another phenomenal season of television. The characters and the way they're fleshed out is so well done, and the way that the characters clash with each other. There's so much emotion on display, and there's lots of emotion and depth. The new characters like Gina are really well written. The season's entertaining. It's got some really funny moments. There's really few funny moments that I touched on, but it's just because this season's so dark, and that's what I primarily focus on. This season just balances it all so perfectly. If I had a few complaints, it would be that Todd doesn't have that much to do this season. His storyline does overstay its welcome once again here, but that aside, this is an excellent season of television. So I'm going to go ahead and give Bojack Horseman Season 5 a 9.5 out of 10. Okay, have you watched Bojack Horseman Season 5? What did you think about it? Let me know in the comments down below. Make sure you like, make sure you comment, make sure you subscribe. Stay tuned for some more videos soon, and Gavin out.